The counteroffensive has begun. Let's take a look. In the last 72 hours, we have seen battles in, around, or near Belgorod, Novoselivske, Bilohorivka, Marinka, Bakhmut, and Novodarivka. Now, of course, there are battles taking place all over the front line, but the major arenas seem to be the aforementioned areas. We are seeing incredible clips of active battlegrounds with artillery fire, mechanized brigades, and tank formations attacking in various directions. This drone in Marinka supposedly captured this wild footage of missile fire and explosions. And in this clip, you can see a Ukrainian fighter jet flying towards a target. This drone footage seems to show a gathering of Ukrainian soldiers being decimated by grenades that are being dropped by the drone. Now, out of respect to the soldiers and for YouTube's rules, we won't be showing this clip in its totality. It's pretty gruesome. If you want to see those clips, you can visit our Twitter page to see them. All information at this point is unverifiable and should be taken with many grains of salt. For example, the Russians are claiming that they wiped out 40 armored vehicles and 250 Ukrainian soldiers in a single attack when 6 mechanized battalions and 2 tank battalions of the Ukrainian armed forces attacked in the south. Here, you can see the supposed footage of Russian fire on those battalions. Meanwhile, in Bakhmut, Prigozhin, the head of Wagner, the infamous Russian mercenary group, claimed that Ukrainians took a key area in Bakhmut's neighborhood, and he claimed that the Russians no longer had full control. Villages all along the front are changing hands as the initial phase of the counteroffensive is carried out. In some areas, the Russians repelled the Ukrainian attacks, while in others, the Ukrainians penetrated and captured some territory. Fighting has been fierce, and Ukraine has committed quite a few reserve groups into the battles, indicating that this is definitely the start of the counteroffensive. There are reports that German Leopard 2 tanks, considered to be one of the best in the world, were seen for the first time on the battlefield. This hasn't been confirmed yet, but it wouldn't come as a surprise. These are very formidable tanks. The Germans and European allies have sent Ukraine about 80 of these tanks. Each one costs about $11 million, so it should give you an idea of just how much aid was given to Ukraine. The Russians are supposedly producing 100 advanced tanks a month to add to their already massive supply of tanks, so you can get a sense of how quickly Ukraine would run out of the 80 Leopard 2 tanks that were given to them, but only time will tell. It doesn't seem clear what the Ukrainian objective is with the counteroffensive, but there is some speculation that they struck between the Zaporizhia and Donetsk regions where they believe the Russian defenses are the weakest. It's also believed that the Ukrainians will try and cut through these regions to retake Mariupol on the southern coast. If this is indeed the plan, and if it does happen, it would effectively sever the land bridge between Russia and Crimea and deliver a humiliating blow to the Russian army. Also, on the southwestern front near Kherson, the Ukrainians have been shelling heavily across the Dnipro River, and the 22nd Mechanized Brigades have been deployed towards the Kherson region, as well as 2 Galaxy and Metal Shark boats with special ops. It seems like their intention is to shell the border region and cross the river and head south towards Crimea. I'd like to share 2 tweets with you from someone named Michael Valtersen. He's a former officer in the Swedish Armed Forces and Air Defense. He's a former defense politician and chief of staff for the Swedish Democrats, and he's currently a political and military analyst. He gives his analysis of the Ukrainian offensive operations. He says on June 4th, Ukraine scaled up offensive operations on the southern front, but the losses are too high for long-time success. Earlier operations were mainly reconnaissance in force with platoon and company-sized combat groups. Yesterday, meaning June 3rd, the Ukrainian forces seemed to be battalion-sized combat groups. According to Russian Ministry of Defense, 8 Ukrainian battalions were involved in the offensive operation southeast of Mala Tokmachka at the Vremivka salient and east of Vuhledar towards, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Fighting was intense, but on most places, Ukrainian forces were turned back, mainly by intense Russian artillery and air attacks. In some places, the Ukrainian army succeeded in capturing a couple hundred meters. There are 2 different media stories about the fighting. The Ukrainian side is very quiet about both the attacks and eventual losses on their side. Russian sources are much more liberal with information, both in text and videos. If the Russian information is correct, this explains the Ukrainian silence, since the Ukrainian side seldom concedes major losses on their side and tries to shift attention to other subjects, which is something honestly both sides do. Now, according to the Russian side, Ukrainian losses amount to at least 10 tanks, nearly 40 IFVs or APCs, and at least 250 eliminated. With this number of people eliminated, the number of wounded would probably be 750 to 1,000. Are these rumors true? The prospects for a Ukrainian counteroffensive looks very dim. This is even if we don't take into account the ongoing intense Russian air and artillery offensive against Ukrainian troop concentrations, ammunition, and fuel depots. With losses of over 1,000 killed in action or missing in action, that means a Ukrainian brigade of 4,000 men lose at least 25% of its manpower. That's on the brink of making a brigade unusable. 2 days fighting with such losses would destroy a brigade's battle capability. 24 days with such losses would in effect destroy 12 brigades of the Ukrainian armed forces that have gathered for the counteroffensive. With losses of around 12 brigades, meaning 25,000 killed in action, 250 tanks, and 1,000 IFVs or APCs, all of the strategic reserves of the Ukrainian armed forces that has been built, aka trained, during the last 6 months would be gone. In exchange, the Ukrainian side could have advanced maybe 10 kilometers in some places, or more generally 2 or 3 kilometers along maybe half of the southern front. Once again, if the Russian claims are true, the Russian armed forces must feel relieved and the Ukrainian armed forces must feel very worried by the results of the fighting on the southern front on June 4th. Now for the second tweet. News update, Southeast Front, Vremivka salient, late afternoon, June 5th. Continued Ukrainian attacks but limited progress besides Novodonetsk, which was taken an hour ago. Leopard tanks were present during the attack in Novodonetsk. During the day, Ukrainian armed forces units continued attacking the same positions as yesterday on the Vremivka salient. Those places are Novodorivka, Rivnopil, Neskuchne, and Novodonetsk. If I butcher those pronunciations, fuck off. The Ukrainian side is still quiet about the fighting. They will probably say that this is the beginning of the counteroffensive if they are successful with moderate losses. If not, they will probably bury this operation in silence. But the use of Leopards and the capture of Novodonetsk should get Ukrainian attention. The blue shaded areas are alleged Ukrainian controlled areas after yesterday's fighting. During the early morning, the Russian armed forces took full control of Novodorivka, highlighted in the yellow box, and the Russian front line north of Rivnopil is holding. There are Russian claims that Neskuchne and the green box also are under Russian control again, but I haven't got any confirmation on that. The fighting in Novodonetsk has continued during the day. The Ukrainians broke through the Russian defenses during the night and took control over half of Novodonetsk. Then a Russian counterattack during the early morning forced the Ukrainians back to the outskirts of the settlement. The original Ukrainian attack force consisted of a battalion of soldiers and 35 armored vehicles. During the afternoon, the Ukrainian forces got reinforcements of at least 2 companies of soldiers and 20 armored vehicles, among those several Leopard tanks. After that, the Ukrainian forces succeeded in taking Novodonetsk, highlighted in the purple box, just a short while ago. At least 2 Leopards and 5 armored vehicles were seen in the settlement. I believe Ukraine's armed forces at present are waiting and preparing for a new Russian counterattack aiming at retaking Novodonetsk. Okay, in my personal opinion, here's what we should take away from this. Number 1, this is the counteroffensive. It's not coming, it's already here. Number 2, this is just the beginning. This is not the best that Ukraine has to give. There will be much more over the coming days or weeks. It seems like these are just the initial punches to soften the lines of defense, engage where an opportunity might appear. Number 3, without a major collapse of either side, I don't think we're going to see a major defeat of either army. Both sides are well trained and well equipped. So I don't believe we will see a major defeat or rout until one side is exhausted of either men or supplies. And number 4, if Ukraine doesn't score a major win, they will claim that this is not the counteroffensive. If they do score, they will claim this is the counteroffensive and hail it as a major victory. It's just the way propaganda works. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Lastly, in my opinion, I don't think we're going to see the Ukrainians achieve much out of this counteroffensive. I'm inclined to agree with Michael Valterson. The more Ukraine attacks, the more men they will lose. Those casualties will rise quickly, and we will see severely weakened battalions and brigades. This simply cannot be sustained. The kill rate is too high, but we'll have to wait and see. Stay tuned. And remember, all of this is unverified speculation. If you have thoughts or information to share, please comment them below. We'll share more when we have it. Also, please like, comment, and subscribe, as it helps us navigate the algorithm that flags and demonetizes content such as this.
Trust nothing. No